Hey guys, and welcome back. I know it's been quite a while. I've spent the past few months working pretty much exclusively on my Ghostbusters Terror Dog, trying to get it done in time for Afterlife. It was very stressful, but also awesome. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know all of this. But if you want to know more about that, definitely check out my Instagram. But we're finally here. I'm finally finding the time to film the intro for this freaking video. And I'm going to show you how I made my Huntress mask. So I literally was making this mask at the same time I was making the Huntress axe, which, if you recall, was the very first weapon that I made from Dead by Daylight. And it was just such a process because I was insistent on trying to make it as authentic as possible. So I went through a lot of trial and error. It took a very long time. But we're finally here. It's finally done. I can finally show you how I did it. So hooray, we're here, yay. So after a very long period of procrastination and taking on other projects, we can finally jump right into it. So let's go. So I was fortunate enough to find some really amazing reference images for this project. And among these references, one of them mentioned that her mask was paper mache. So my plan was to attempt a genuine approach, even though I haven't used paper mache since like elementary school. So for the sculpt, I used Chavant NSP Medium. This is a plastiline clay that basically never dries out. It's very good for machined shapes, and I felt like it would be perfect for the look that I wanted. This type of clay needs to be kept warm to work with. I use a little makeshift clay warmer, which is an insulated cardboard box with a work lamp stuck in the top. Real high tech. I started by laying out the general shape on my life cast and then lumped on a ton of clay. I like to carve things down, so it's gonna look a little pudgy for a bit, but don't worry, we'll get there. Personally, I'm not a very fast sculptor, so this is kind of a long process. I'm using my reference images as best as I can to try and push the forms back into space until things look right. But sometimes it's hard to see where the problem areas are. So what I like to do is superimpose the reference image over a picture of the sculpt. I use an app called PicMonkey for this, and it allows me to move the opacity around and make it more clear what areas don't line up. Then I can go back in and adjust the edges and clean up the shapes. I had a hard time with the nose for a while because it kept looking like a cat instead of a rabbit, but once I added the ears, things started to come together. You'll see that I frequently draw in symmetry lines to ensure that I haven't lost track of where things should be. When you sculpt for hours at a time, it'll really surprise you how your eyes just stop seeing things. Once I was happy with all the shapes, I could go in and start cleaning up lines and fine-tuning the little details. I also sculpted in some of the obvious damage marks. I wasn't sure yet how I'd be finishing the mask, so I didn't know if these would be visible, so I added them just in case. With the sculpt complete, it was time to make the mold. My first thought for this mold was plaster. This is a super cheap material for making molds, and it's also quick and easy to do. I made a mold box using a water-based clay, and then laid on several layers of hydrocal, as well as several layers of burlap to make a strong mold without adding extra weight. Now we get into the paper mache. I did a lot of research with this and ended up going with this Elmer's paper mache paste because it's least likely to grow mold and is supposedly very durable. This tiny bag makes so much, I will literally have it until I die. In order to use paper mache in a plaster mold, my research told me that I needed to cover the mold interior with plastic wrap. I brushed in Vaseline so that it would stick and then cut up lots of tiny pieces. This was tedious and totally not fun. Then came the laying in of the paper strips. I used newspaper because that's what everyone uses, but after one layer dried, it pulled away from the mold. And while it was strong for being newspaper, it would need way too many layers to be self-supporting. So I tried another technique I found, which is a paper paste instead of strips. This is a mixture of Elmer's white glue, drywall compound, and finely shredded toilet paper. For the paper shredding, I bought a tiny food processor and loaded it with wet toilet paper and then literally pulverized it. Mixed together, this created a heavy paste that was much easier to lay into a mold. This technique, however, still needed the mold to be coated with plastic wrap, and it showed in the final product. The paste captured all the wrinkles in the plastic wrap, and there were also a lot of air bubbles. But the result was pretty sturdy. So I made the decision to make another mold. I was able to touch up the sculpt and mold it again, this time using silicone, which wouldn't require any type of release agent or plastic wrap. I remade the clay mold box and then poured on the silicone. Once this was fully cured, I could add the plaster, this time just as a shell to support the silicone. But it's the same process, just layers of hydrocal and burlap. Once that was done, I pried the whole life cast off the backboard so that I could mold the other side. I made a little mold wall along the edge of the mask and then added lots of release agent to keep the silicone from sticking to itself. Very important. Silicone will not stick to anything except for itself. I also Vaseline the plaster so that that wouldn't stick to itself either. Then we repeat the same process as the front. Once everything was cured, we had a much nicer version of the first mold. No release agent or plastic wrap required. And overall, a silicone mold is just much more versatile. Back to the paper mache, it took many attempts to find the right formula and method that would work for this, but eventually I stopped filming because of how long it took, so I don't have a lot of footage of the final method, but I do have lots of pictures. For the final mask, I went back to the Elmer's clear paste method, but this time I used several layers of very thick printmaking paper. And this was very durable from the get-go. And it also shows the lines of the paper, which is something that I wanted because it looks like more authentic paper mache. After that, I added additional layers of paper to the inside, as well as some of that drywall compound paste, but with much less toilet paper. It was more drywall compound than anything. I also added a thin coat of this to the outside of the mask to smooth over some of the surface. With this setup, I was able to sand and smooth wherever I needed to, and it was very strong and durable. I was even able to cut in some more damage lines with the Dremel. Once the cleanup was done, I sealed the mask with several coats of shellac to help prevent moisture absorption, since it is still paper mache. Then I could go in with the paint. The base colors were done with acrylics, and then I added a lot of details with airbrush paints, so they have a diffused look. I don't have a ton of experience with an airbrush, so this took a few tries for me, but I was super happy with the final result. The final touch was the blood, which is a mixture of heavy body red acrylic paint and triple thick gloss. In order for the splatter to be more accurate, I painted the blood on and only added some small splatters to tie it all in together. For the veil, I found this black lace on Etsy that was extremely close to the look of hers. For the area covering her head, the lace appears fully opaque, so I sewed some plain black material underneath so that it's no longer see-through at the top. I then painstakingly stitched the veil to the mask through some pre-drilled holes. I had trouble getting the needle through for this. I actually broke like 3 of them. But once I finally got the correct needle and the correct hole size, I attached the veil with some twine. The mask is secured to my head using a single piece of elastic, which I epoxied in place on either side to make sure it wasn't going anywhere. And then all that was left was to rough up the lace. After I cut the general shape, I roughed it up using an X-Acto blade. And that's it. There she is in all of her glory. So that about wraps it up, guys. I hope this video was helpful. I did get a lot of comments throughout my videos, mostly on the Huntress video, of people saying that they're trying to make a full Huntress costume themselves. So here's the next piece of the puzzle. Now you got a weapon and a mask. Hopefully next I'll be able to do some videos on how I made the costume. To be honest, I didn't film a whole lot of that because it was a very new process for me. So it's just very intermittent. But hopefully I can get some information out there for you guys that are trying to do the whole thing. But I'm also looking forward to getting back into making Dead by Daylight weapons again. I've got a lot on the list that I want to do from my personal picks and you guys sending in suggestions. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of a mental health break because doing the terror dog definitely took a lot out of me. But this was just a fun little, let's finish this video, so we're doing this video. But definitely going to be taking a little bit of a break through the holidays, just chillaxing, as we all should be doing. It's been a rough few years. But definitely keep sending me your suggestions for weapons that you'd like to see, so I can get them on the list, so I can get some patterns going and stuff like that. So yeah, as always, if you guys have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, whatever, definitely let me know. And until then, stay tuned for awesome.